Guys.
Like Kanye West said, having money is not everything, not having it is. No, Deuteronomy 8:18 says, God gives us the ability to create wealth. No, it's the love of money that's the root of all. You know why money so much? Why you get up a little more? Everybody just think about money. I'm just trying to leave a legacy for money. It's not everything, but when you got it, you can do some cool stuff. Now, your host for Talking Money in the Morning, financial health mentor to the world class, Cortez.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Talking Money in the Morning live with your main man, H. Cortez, the one and only financial health mentor to the working class, where I do my very best to bring practical yet proven wealth building strategies to working class men and women all over this great nation of ours. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am an eternal optimist. This show is all about positive energy, success, wealth, legacies, trying to do something to put us in a position that we will be better tomorrow for the actions that we take today. Today, we're talking about seed, time, and harvest. When your past catches up with you, will that be a good thing or will that be a bad thing, right? So we're going to talk about that this morning and dive into that. So basically, as we kick off every show, I got to let you know exactly who this show is for. Today's show is for my risers and grinders. If you got up this morning with your legacy on your brain and you're going to put the feet to the ground and start making something happen towards that legacy, then this show is for you. Maybe you are the type of person to have the desire to build wealth. Maybe you have the discipline to build wealth. Maybe you yearn to build wealth, but you lack a game plan. Maybe need a mentor. Maybe want to need some coaching or some tips and some strategies. Well, this show, my friend, is for you. If you went to bed last night and as you lie there, you start thinking about, man, what am I going to do tomorrow to make sure that my great-great-grandchildren are proud to bear my name? This show, my friend, is for you. Now, on the other hand, who is this show not for? If you are sitting back, tripping off that crazy debate the other night and waiting on Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to fix the economy instead of focusing on your economy, this show is not for you. If you're the type of person who got that weird relationship with money, you think capitalism is a dirty word, you think money is evil, this show ain't for you, man, because I can promise you, I'm going to say the word money, legacy, wealth, probably 300 times in the next 27 minutes or so. So if you want to tune out, then we completely understand, because what you got to understand is that if you don't have that right relationship, put money in its right place, then you will tend to repel it away from you and instead of attract it to you. So if you don't like money, you don't want to watch this show, because the people who are watching this show are starting to attract money to them. Now, let's be perfectly clear, though. I do not have a problem with you not wanting to be wealthy. That's your prerogative. Some people are content with where they are. Some people are satisfied with being average. That's just not me. I only have a problem if you have a problem with me wanting to be wealthy. Because I say it every morning, guys, and I hope you're starting to get it. If you've never seen a future billionaire before, take a screenshot, because you're looking at one, right? And if you have a problem with just that statement alone, then this show ain't for you, man. You can tune out, and we promise we will not have any ill feelings towards you. Today's show is brought to you by Income Shifters Network out of Florida, guys. They've invited me to do a webinar, free wealth building workshop tonight. So if you go to my fan page, Financial Health Mentor, and click on my events, there is an event there for tonight, 8:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. Me and my man, Brian Cohen from the Income Shifters Network, I'm going to do a live webinar with Q&A on how to build wealth from scratch. You don't want to miss that, guys. So if you're serious about building wealth, and I know sometimes the show takes on different meanings and we do different things, but if you want just some strictly wealth building strategies on how me and my team are building wealth, helping people increase their cash flow all across this country, then you want to go over to my fan page, Financial Health Mentor. Look at my events. The event for today is Income Shifters Network. They're bringing me on to do a live wealth building webinar and Q&A session. So you'll want to click that you're going to that event, so you'll get a reminder right around 8, and you guys come be a part of that webinar. You're going to be blown away by how easy it is to build wealth, and I'm going to give you a step-by-step game plan. So today we're talking about seed time and harvest. When your past catches up to you, will that be a good thing or a bad thing? And I have to give a shout out to my man, Terrence Hill, T Hill, the most positive man on the planet, because it was a post that he put up yesterday that made me want to bring this information to you guys. So when I say seed time harvest, what comes to mind, right? Hopefully you're thinking about maybe planting a few flowers in your front yard garden, or maybe you grow a little food in your backyard, got a little victory garden going on, and you're thinking about seed time harvest. And when people usually say that, they're really missing it, because a lot of times they say seed time and then harvest time, or in other words, they're saying there's a time to plant seeds and then there's a time to harvest the fruits or what you planted. But the correct analogy is seed, there's time, then there's harvest, right? So there's seed, you plant your seeds, and then time goes by, then you harvest. So when you think about that, I want you to think about that, because that's important, and that's the part that nobody wants to deal with. Nobody is dealing with the time, right? We're sowing seeds, time takes place, then there's a harvest later. Now, guess what? The seeds that I'm talking about sowing today, primarily, I'm talking about the seeds that come out of your mouth. Your words are seeds, right? Your words are seeds. Why do you think I tell you every morning that I'm a future billionaire? Because I'm sowing seeds in the soil of my own mind. I'm sowing that seed, right? And then I'm giving it to you so you can hold me accountable, right? So there's seed, the time that you sow your seed, and then there's time. What happens in that time? We're going to talk about that. Then the harvest takes place. So you have to understand that, number one, your words are seeds. So when I say when your past catches up with you, will that be a good thing or a bad thing? I want you to think about the words that you have been using for the last year, the last 2 years, the last 5 years, the last 10 years. Because believe it or not, those words have gone out. Those seeds have been sown. And if they were positive seeds, then eventually you're going to reap a positive harvest. But if they were negative seeds, then you're going to reap a negative harvest. We all heard it said, what goes around comes around. The things that you do to others will come back to you. So you sow a seed of negativity, guess what? You're going to reap a harvest of negativity. You sow a seed of inactivity, meaning you're sitting on your butt all day thinking that your life is going to get better and you're not putting in the work, then guess what? You're going to reap a harvest of nothingness, right? So I want you to understand that there's seed, there's a time to sow. So the words that come out of your mouth, they are your seeds. What are you saying? You know, my girl India Ari says it all the time, and I can't remember the name of the song, so forgive me, but in one of her lyrics she says, the words that come out your mouth, you're the first to hear. And when you think about that, when you really think about that, the words that come out of your mouth, you're the first to hear. So when you speak negative to someone else, who's the first person hearing that? When you're sowing seeds of negativity in somebody else's life, who's the first person you're sowing those seeds with? Yourself. That's why I speak positive. because I know the words that come out of my mouth, I hear them first. They go into the soil of my brain first. That seed is planted here first. Then it goes to whoever I'm directing that thing to, right? So if you're not careful, you could be sowing seeds of negativity. And some people don't believe in karma because they can't put it together. Because they don't want to deal with the time. So when I talk about dealing with the time, right, I can sow a seed. So some of you guys know that I have a greenhouse in the backyard. I grow cotton and I grow a little bit of vegetables and things of that nature. So when I sow a seed, right, then the seed goes into the earth. Now, I'm not responsible for making the plant grow, right? God does that. He already put that in that package of that seed. So I put the seed in good soil. So that's what I'm responsible for, the cultivation of the soil. Your mind is the soil. You are responsible for cultivating your soil, making it conducive to grow those positive thoughts and bear positive fruits after time, right? We got to deal with the time element. So I put the seed in the ground, and then it depends on what you plant. If some things are what we call annuals. That means you plant them every year. That means they grow for a season, and then that's a wrap. You have to plant them again another season, right? Some things are perennials. That means you plant them one time and they just grow. They overwinter, they stay alive, and they just grow. Trees are a good example of that. So when we're dealing with time, the reason some people don't believe in karma is because they've sown bad seed, but time hasn't allowed that seed to mature yet, so they haven't reaped the harvest of that negative karma. So they believe that what goes around, what I did to somebody else, didn't necessarily come back to me. Well, it takes time for a seed to mature to harvest. But guess what? Eventually, a storm is going to rain down on you of negativity. That's your past catching up to you. But a lot of people do so much negative stuff that they can't even place why this is coming back to them at that time. So there's seed. You can sow positive seeds. You can sow negative seeds. There's time. Takes that time for that seed to develop. And then there's harvest. Now, during the time phase, there is two things that has to be taking place. Time in of itself. That means what God put into that seed is doing its thing. But then as the person who sowed the seed, then I have to do something as well, because if it's a seed that I want to bear harvest or create a harvest, then I have to maintain and look after and nurture the growth of that seed, right? So I maintain, look after, and nurture the growth of that seed. So when the weeds come up, then I have to pull those weeds out. When the birds come down and try to pluck the seed out the ground as I sow that seed, then I have to put up a scarecrow or something, or let my dog run around so that the birds don't come down and pluck the seeds before they begin to germinate. So I have to be active to make sure that I'm going to have a good harvest. So your words are your seeds, right? And then your actions are your fertilizer. Your words are your seeds. So if I'm telling you that I'm a future billionaire, but I never take action, I never fertilize that seed, then there's a couple things that's going to happen. First and foremost, I have to cultivate the actual soil, right? I don't know about you guys. I live in Missouri. And in Missouri, our soil is clay rich. That means it's extremely compacted. I can throw a seed on the ground, and chances are that seed won't do anything because soil is so compacted, it's almost like concrete. Right? Some of you guys are not taking the time to cultivate the soil of your mind, and you've got people in all walks of life, including myself, throwing seeds, casting seeds, sowing seeds, trying to sow seeds to get them to germinate in your mind, but your soil is like clay. A seed won't take hold, right? The Bible gives a good analogy on the seed sower. He says the sower scatters the seeds. Some of the seeds fall on shallow ground, meaning they take root quickly, but because there's no depth, then that root fizzles out. Some of us have these great ideas. We start something, and immediately once we get it going, then we get some negative comments from somebody, and that intense motivation that we had just fizzles out. That's a seed falling on shallow ground. Some of the seeds fall on concrete, in a sense that some of you guys are just plain hard-headed, right? So the seeds that I'm spitting to you today are falling on concrete, and they're just bouncing up. Then the seed's not going to germinate on concrete. Right? Some of the seeds fall on good soil, but the birds come down and they pluck them away. They eat the seeds. Some of you guys have people in your life right now. You heard me say something. You went back and told it to a spouse, friend, sister, cousin, whoever, and that person said, man, that's crazy. And you said, okay. So that was the bird plucking that seed that could have germinated in your mind and put you on the path to where you want to be. You allowed a bird to come pluck that seed away from you, and now you don't have anything germinating in your life. So I want you to understand that first thing you have to do, you have to cultivate the soil of your mind, prepare it so that the seeds that you're speaking to yourself, the seeds that other people are speaking to you, will take root, will grow, and then they will begin to bear fruit. Once you cultivate your mind, then you sow the seed. Now the seed is there, but you can't walk away. You can't walk away. I've done that, right? I'm also a youth basketball coach, so I get my garden going every, I get my garden going every spring. But guess what happens in late spring, early summer? Basketball season kicks in full gear. And sometimes I walk away from my garden, and guess what? The weeds overrun your garden. What are the weeds in a traditional garden? How does that relate to what we're talking about today? The weeds are more like those negative thoughts, right? And you say, okay, before I planted my seeds, I cultivated my garden. I got all the weeds out of the garden, and there's nothing but good soil there. I plant my seeds, my crop starts to come up. And while I'm in action mode during that time, I'm actually maintaining. I'm taking the weeds out. I'm constantly moving the soil and making sure that everything is right. Plants are leaning over. I'm putting them back up. I'm taking care of them, right? That's me nurturing the seed. But guess what? The moment I get into basketball season, I have less time to nurture those seeds. Now, even though I've already taken all of the weeds out of that particular plot, because the world, because negativity is stronger than positivity and spreads faster, then I can take a couple of weeks away and literally have my garden overgrown with weeds in such a really short period of time. So what am I saying? When it comes to the time, you have to be continuously active with cultivating and fertilizing your seed. You have to be actively blocking those negative thoughts, those people who are around you who are not willing to support you, who are not willing to help you on your mission. You have to constantly put your blockers up. You have to constantly build that fence around your garden so that the rabbits and the other squirrels and things won't come bite off the leaves and keep your stuff from growing. You have to constantly put forth action, one foot in front of the other, to get those seeds to cultivate and to grow so that they can ultimately bear fruit for you. So what we're talking about, if you just tuned in, we're talking about if your past catches up with you today, is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? What are we talking about? We're talking about the seeds that you sow from your mouth over the last year, over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years. What kind of harvest are those seeds going to produce? And when they finally start to bear fruit, is that going to be a good thing or is that going to be a bad thing? Some of you guys, from what you've done in the past, is going to have a storm of negativity rain down on you, and you have to ask yourself, are you going to be prepared for it? Now, here's what's cool about a seed time and harvest, right? Here's what's cool about it. Even if I plant my seed in not so good soil, so I didn't take the time to cultivate the soil, but I plant my seed, I see that seed starts to come up, and then I go ahead and I start pulling out some of the negative stuff around it. I start pulling out the weeds. I start giving it water. I start to nourish it. I start to fertilize it. Guess what? I can cultivate the soil at the same time as my seeds are coming up to prepare for that harvest. Just like when I plant the seeds of positivity, and the action I take determines whether that seed is going to grow and flourish and thrive and produce a good harvest. Well, if you, my friend, over the last year, last 10 years, last 5 years, have constantly sown negative seeds, then you can do something about that to reduce the negative effect that will ultimately happen when it's time for that thing to produce fruit or to harvest, right? So if you're the person who's been a pessimist pretty much all of your life, but the last year you turned over a new leaf and you said, man, it's time for me to start sowing some positive. I'm going to turn my life around and start doing some good things. Well, guess what? Those negative seeds that you sown, they're still growing. They are still growing. And eventually, whether it's a perennial or a tree that's going to eventually manifest into full-fledged fruit, they're going to rain down a storm of negativity on you. But if you know you've been that person, what you're going to have to do to try to get some of that negativity, some of those plants up so that they don't reap, that harvest doesn't produce, you have to go back to some of those people, some of those places, some of those things, some of those actions that you did, and you have to try to right some of those wrongs, right? So if you spoke negatively to someone over the last 5 years and you constantly told them there wasn't going to be nothing and they can't do this and they can't do that, then you're going to have to go back, circle back to those people because you planted seeds in their heads. So now in order to keep those seeds from bearing fruit and raining down a storm of negativity on you, you're going to have to go back to those people and try to undo some of that stuff. Right? On top of that, you're going to have to start sowing good seeds of positivity so that your future harvest will produce. So again, we're talking about seed, time, and harvest. If your past were to catch up with you right now, would that be a good thing or that be a bad thing? Right? Right now, my past is catching up with me. And that's a good thing because over the last 18 months, I've been constantly sowing, constantly motivating, constantly encouraging, constantly cultivating, constantly putting one foot in front of the other to make my dreams come true. So I've sown those seeds. But what happens is most people, they sow the seed and they want the tree to pop out the ground in 24 hours full of fruit. That ain't how this thing works, man. There's seed, there's time, there's harvest. And then there's the action that you have to take during the time, just like you have to take an action to actually plant the seed. You have to take action during the time phase, and just like you have to take action during the harvest phase. So the action that you take during the time phase is you fertilizing your seed, is you cultivating your soil, is you're pulling the weeds out, is you're separating yourself from people who mean you no good, is you start to hang around different people, you start to put in different information, you continue to fertilize those seeds. I'm a future billionaire, so I fertilize those seeds by studying wealthy people, other billionaires, understanding what they went through in their life, how they overcame certain obstacles, because I know if I'm on the path to be a billionaire, I'm going to be hit with some of those same obstacles I'm going to have to overcome. So I'm cultivating the soil of my mind. I'm cultivating, nurturing the seeds that I've already sown. I'm taking action every day so that I'm fertilizing those seeds so that they continue to grow and progress and become healthy. So when they bear fruit, the Bible says every seed will bear fruit after its own kind, 30, 60, or 100-fold. That means if you put the seed in the ground, it's going to bring forth fruit at least 30-fold. That means it's going to bring back more than what it started with, right? It's going to bring back 60-fold. That means it's going to have a better harvest. It's going to bring back 100-fold. That means a maximum harvest. Right, so a tree can bring forth the fruit and have 20 apples on that tree one season. Right, if you continue to cultivate and fertilize that thing and make sure it's in good shape, and you're pruning it and doing everything that you need to make that tree maximize, and maybe the next season it grows 50 fruit, and maybe that's the 60-fold. But then you continue to nurture, cultivate, and give that tree what it needs, and then maybe the third season it has 200 fruit. That's 100-fold. That's the maximum potential for that tree. And you do that, and then every year thereafter, that tree produces 200 fruit, maximum fold, right? Some of us are not even producing 30-fold because we don't believe in what we're doing. We don't believe in ourselves. We're not sowing seeds of positivity into our own mind. We're not cultivating the soil of our mind so that when seeds fall in, they take root and they begin to germinate and they begin to grow. And even those who do have a few seeds fall in and the roots are taking hold and the seeds are starting to grow, we're not taking the action every day to keep the weeds out. We're not taking the action every day to give it water, to give it fertilizer so that it can continue to thrive. As a result, that thing withers and dies. How many of you guys had dreams and goals that you knew from the very beginning, man, this thing right here, this could be it. And you got that thing started and you started moving forward, one foot in front of the other. And then life happened to you. And then you stopped taking action to make sure that that thing was going to continue to grow, continue to be cultivated, and continue on its path to producing 30, 60, 100-fold. And that thing withered up and died on you. Have to understand that you have to cultivate the seeds in your, the soil in your mind, your words that you speak or the seeds, the time that you put in going after your dreams and goals. That's the nurturing of the plant, right? That's the taking the action to put a fence around your lettuce so that the rabbits don't come and eat it up, right? So same with your seeds that are growing in your mind. You might have to put a hedge of protection around you from the friends that you currently have in your circle right now, from family members right now. Might be those rabbits that will come eat that seed right up, man. And you don't produce anything and you never get to that harvest phase. So your words are your seeds, your actions are the fertilizer to that seed. And then eventually you will get to the harvest. But understand something. Some of you guys will have to face a few seasons of negative harvest because of what you've done in the past. And that's okay. You just have to bear down. When the storm blows through, you just close the shutters and you just have to bear through it, right? My mom told me one time the story of the storm and the eagle, right? And what happened was you had a young eagle, and every time a storm cropped up in that young eagle's life, he would fly away, right? He'd see the storm coming and he would fly away. And eventually he'd get to the place where he outran the storm. And then he would set up his nest, get to chilling right there. And 6 months down the road, here comes another storm. Then he fly away, he flaps and he flew, he flapped and he flew. And he would have this saying that he said to himself. He said, I'm one of God's fastest creations, land, air, or sea. There's no storm that's ever fast enough to catch me. He would end up in another place. He would build his nest. But what he realized that after a time, the storm kept coming and they would come more frequently. So every time you see one coming, he flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew. He'd outrun the storm. I'm one of God's fastest creations, land, air, or sea. There's no storm fast enough to ever catch me, right? And he would get to another place and set up his nest. This time the storm showed back up in a month. He flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew. I'm one of God's greatest creations, land, air, or sea. There's no storm fast enough to ever catch me. And this time he set up his nest, and within a week, here's the storm again, until that eagle gained some maturity and he got tired of running from his storms. And you know what he did? He did two things. He did an about face. That means he turned around and he faced the storm. And then he changed the narrative in his head. So instead of flying away from the storm this time, he turned around and flew right into the storm. And he flapped and he flew and he flapped and he flew. And he said, I'm one of God's bravest creations, land, air, or sea. No storm, no matter how loud, will ever scare me. And as he flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew, he hit a turbulence that knocked him back a little bit. But he didn't get deterred. He continued to fly into the storm. He flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew. And he changed the narrative. He said to himself, I'm one of God's bravest creations, land, air, or sea. No storm, no matter how dark, will ever scare me. And he continued to fly into the storm, and he hit another turbulence, and that turbulence knocked him back. But he didn't get deterred. He continued to fly into the storm. He flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew, he flapped and he flew. Changed the narrative in his head. I'm one of God's bravest creations, land, air, or sea. There's no storm strong enough to ever scare me. And before he knew it, he didn't realize that as he hit each turbulence that knocked him back, each turbulence also elevated him. So before he knew it, he's flying above the storm and he's looking down into the eye of the storm. And guess what? He could have done this long time ago, but he ran from his storm over and over and over again. Some of you guys are running from the storms of negativity that's going to catch you because you've sown negative seeds in the past. You took negative actions in the past that will eventually catch up to you. Stop running from them. Face them. Do an about face. Change the narrative in your head. See, some storms you can run from, but if you run from a storm, you'll always be running. At some point, you have to buckle, batten down the hatches, and you just have to weather the storm, especially if you're moving towards a more positive life for yourself. Right? I had to do it. It took me 20 years to mess up my life. And I couldn't expect to get it turned around in 1 year, in 2 years. I had a lot of storms that were chasing me down that I was running from because of some negative activities and negative words that I was speaking over my life. I was around people who were speaking negative trash into my life. And those seeds began to germinate and got to a place where they start bearing fruit. And I was running from that storm. At some point, you just have to weather the storm. Get through all of the negative crap that's going to come back on you based on the way you lived your life previously. Get through that storm and go ahead and start pressing forward, pressing towards the new mark, pressing towards the new you. You're going to have to weather it. Otherwise, you're going to be running from it forever. And here's the thing. Those storms will always come in the most inopportune time. Right? Because what I was doing is I was running from those storms and I was laying foundations for the future me. And I was building and I was getting things in order for the future me. Right? But every time I got something in order and that storm came, I had to abandon that foundation that I was laying and I ran from the storm again. So just like that eagle, he had to keep building a new nest every time he got far enough away from the storm and settled down. Guys, it ain't worth it to keep starting over. It's not worth it. Go through your storms in life because they will make you stronger. Every time you run into a little bit of turbulence, it's going to knock you back, but it's going to elevate you at the same time. And before you know it, you're going to be looking down into the eye of your storm. But we've got to go through those things. So we're talking about seed, time, and harvest. Your seeds are your words. What do you do with the time in between? You cultivate those seeds. You nurture those seeds. You baby those plants. When that little shoot first comes up, you have to protect it. There's bugs that's going to come and try to eat that little shoot. There's animals that's going to come and try to eat that little shoot. There's fungus and disease and stuff like that's going to come and try to eat that little shoot. So you have to protect that thing really, really well at the very beginning. And then that thing continues to grow. You keep the weeds away, because what the weeds will do is the weeds have massive root systems. So you have a little baby plant that has a tiny root system. You have weeds around that plant with a massive root system. That's the negativity around you. Negativity around you have massive root systems. They're deeply ingrained in people. So the root system of the weeds, when you pour water into that thing, the weed's going to suck up all the water, and your little baby plant is not going to be able to get any water to sustain itself. So that's why you got to remove the weeds. You start putting fertilizer down, the weeds are going to eat up all of the fertilizer, and that's going to make them grow stronger and faster. So you have to get the weeds away from your plant, right? That's the negativity, the gossip with the people that are around you, that you continue to gossip, and people around you are gossiping. They're sucking that stuff up, and they're growing bigger and bolder with their negativity. And if you don't get them people from around you, man, your little shoot, that little seed that you've got growing in your head, where you sown a positive seed in your head, if you don't get the negative people from around you, that's like the weeds in the garden, man. They're eventually going to overgrow that thing. They're going to suck all the nutrients out of the soil, and that little thing is going to wither and die, and you're going to find yourself back to being a negative person. There's seed. That means that there's the words that you speak to yourself and the words that you allow to be spoken to you. There's time. There's time. It's not seed time. No, there's seed, and then there's time. What do you do during the time? You protect that seed. You protect that soil. Keep the weeds out. You cultivate. You nurture. You put fertilizer on that thing. That is your action. So your words are your seeds. The action that you put forth towards manifesting those seeds or your fertilizer. That's your nourishment. That's your nurturing of the seed. So I am a future billionaire. So I am taking action every day that's nourishing and cultivating and making sure that seed stays strong. Because every time I say that, I can feel the cringe of people. Who the hell does this guy think he is? Right? So I have to batten down. I have to protect that little dream of mine. It's got a shallow root system right now. So I have to be strong with my protection, that in every step that I take, I have to have the right people around me because they want to suck that little dream out of me. I have to get the weeds away from around me, the people who talk negatively and gossip, because if I don't, then they're going to crowd out my little dream, and my little billionaire dream is going to wither and die. That's my action. But I have to keep taking those actions to keep that thing protected so it can grow and take firm roots. I want that thing to grow and take roots like a massive oak tree, right? So the greatest storm comes through, won't even have an effect on that thing. That's how you got to take action every day, massive action to protect those seeds that are starting to germinate in your mind, right? And then you continue to feed them. I continue to read books. I continue to study other billionaires. I continue to study other millionaires. I continue to walk a certain way so that I can get that seed fully germinated and the roots to run deep. And I water that thing every day. And I pluck the weeds out the garden every day. I'm listening to more people who also nourish that seed. And then eventually I will get to the day where I will reap the harvest from that tree. Some of us aren't reaping any harvest because we're not sowing any seed. Some of us aren't sowing any seed because we're not cultivating the soil in our mind. The soil in our mind is packed tight like clay. There's only a few seeds that you can throw on a surface of clay that will actually burrow down into the clay and grow and start taking root and start to grow. Most seeds, you throw them down on clay because it's packed so tight, it's almost like concrete. You throw them down on clay, they will not germinate. So you have to start turning that clay over. Have to turn that clay over. And guess what's one of the best fertilizers is, guys? Manure. Right? So the experiences of your life, stop running from them. Stop bottling them up. You take that shit and you mix it into your soil. You mix it into your soil and you start turning that soil over. Now, as fresh seeds are starting to pop in, now they have opportunity. The soil is aerated. Now they can take root and the roots can start growing deep. And then you can get a shoot to show up. And then eventually that shoot becomes a little twig. And that twig eventually becomes a bigger twig. And that twig eventually becomes a tree. And then that tree eventually grows leaves. And those leaves eventually grow flowers. And those flowers eventually get pollinated. And next thing you know, that thing is bearing fruit 30, 60, 100-fold. But you got to cultivate the soil in your mind. Allow your experiences, don't bottle those up, man. Use those experiences to cultivate, to turn that soil over in your mind. So now when a seed drops in, you got people speaking positive things into your life, you can receive that. Ever give somebody a compliment and they don't know how to receive it? That's somebody who doesn't have the soil in their mind cultivated. That's used to negatively so much. You say, hey man, that's a good looking dress. Oh man, this whole thing. Some people just don't know how to receive positivity. So just like your words or your seeds, and positive words will yield positive results. Guys, if you are a pessimistic person, if you speak negativity everywhere you go, that negativity is going to reap a harvest. That negativity is going to produce a harvest 30, 60, or 100-fold. Stop it. Because you don't want to be in a position where you're finally getting your life together. And guess what? You sown some negative seeds 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. Remember, you have your perennials and you have your annuals. Annuals are things that you have to plant every season. over and over. Your perennials, it takes them, you plant them once and they grow, but it takes some time. So some of you guys have planted a tree of negativity 5 years ago. How many of you guys know that an apple won't produce on its first year? An apple tree don't produce apples the first year. Don't produce apples the second year. Don't produce apples the third year. Don't produce apples the fourth year. But you sown that apple tree of negativity and you think it's not coming back on you. It just hasn't been enough time for that thing to produce its fruit. Year 5, that thing started to produce fruit. Now you've got a storm of negativity raining down on you because you sown negative seeds 5 years ago. So stop with the negative. Understand that the words that come out your mouth, you're the first to hear them. So every time you speak negatively to somebody else, you're speaking that crap to yourself first. And if you're going to continue that, you're going to sow negative seeds in your own head, trying to badmouth somebody else. And guess what? You're going to reap a harvest for that. Enough time is going to go by. Somebody else is going to come by and water that negative seed, and that seed is going to get big, it's going to grow, and it's going to bear fruit, and it will come back on you, right? So stop it. Now, even though you've already got some negative seeds out there, that's cool. You know a storm is coming, right? A harvest is coming from those negative seeds that you sown. Don't run from the storm, guys. Just like that eagle, man, don't run from the storm. Batten down the hatches, close the shutters, and just sit there and weather that storm because you brought it on yourself. And then you use the experience of living through that storm as your testimony to say, you know what? Because that storm was so intense, I will never sow seeds of negativity that's going to reap another harvest like that. All of my seeds are going to be positive from here on out. And that's how it goes. So really quickly, I want to talk to you business people. On the same note, if you're in a business, it works the same way in business, guys. Seed, there's time, and there's harvest. I see my man T Hill jumped on. He was a guy who put a post out yesterday and made me start thinking about this. And so I wanted to do a show on this based on that post that he put out. So if you see my man T Hill, send him a friend request. He is literally the most positive man on the planet, and he keeps it positive 100% of the time. But as a business owner, guys, a lot of you guys follow me because I teach wealth building principles. I teach branding, marketing, business, and things of that nature. Guys, it's the same thing in business. Most businesses run in like 90-day cycles, right? So what I'm doing today, I'm blessing you, and I'm encouraging and motivating and trying to lift you guys up, giving you some food, some nourishment for the seeds that I've been sowing with you over the last, we're on episode 48, over the last 47 episodes, right? But guess what? I'm not expected to see a harvest from the seeds that I'm sowing today until 90 days from now. A lot of times we make a couple moves in business, we don't see a harvest right away, and we quit. And guess what? Somebody else reaps the harvest from the seeds that you've sown because you quit. So now that you understand that business cycles usually run and 90-day cycles, some of them 6-month cycles, some of them 12-month cycles. I have some seeds that I sown last year, didn't reap a harvest on those things until this year. But guess what? Since I didn't quit, I was able to reap the harvest myself. Had I quit, somebody else would have reaped that harvest. So understand in business, the same thing goes, man. You're out making contacts. You're out talking to people about your products and services. And it seems like you're not getting anywhere. But guess what? If you're doing it in a positive way, every time you do that, you're sowing a seed. Every time you shake a hand, introduce yourself to somebody. Every time you message somebody on Facebook, every time you put a video up, every time you do whatever it is that you do in your business, you're sowing a seed. You just have to stick around long enough for the time to take place. So what is the time? So as a business owner, I sow seeds all day, every day. During the time period, I have to nurture those the same way I nurture the seeds in my greenhouse. I have to water them. I have to keep the weeds away. I have to put fertilizer down. Well, I do the same thing. I take continuous action steps in my business to keep cultivating those relationships, to keep sowing those seeds, to keep taking daily action to get better at my craft. And as I'm doing that during the time phase, eventually the seeds that I sowed 9 months ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago will reap a harvest. And guess who's here to benefit from that harvest? Me, because I didn't quit. See, so many of us don't understand that success takes time. Seed, time, then harvest, right? So all while I am sowing my seeds, I'm cultivating my grass, my ground, I'm pulling the weeds out, but I'm also getting myself prepared for the harvest. What does that mean? That means I am putting my business systems in place so that when the harvest comes in, I have a place to put them. I have a place to store that harvest. I know what I'm going to do with that harvest. So some of us sow the seeds, we cultivate the seeds, then the harvest comes in and we don't know what to do with the harvest. So you got to be conscious of all of that stuff when it comes to building your business. There's seed, there's time, and then there's harvest. And then you got to know what to do with that harvest. You got to know how to harvest, right? The Bible says that the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. You know why the laborers are few? Because so many people quit. So if you think about that just in a nutshell, in a vacuum, just that one verse, and I don't promise taking it out of context, but let me just take it out of the Bible for a second. The harvest is plentiful. The laborers are few. That means it's not that many people to reap the harvest. How did the harvest get so plentiful? Because everybody in the beginning was sowing seeds. Everybody was in the beginning sowing seeds. And then when it came to the time part, the action part, where you have to pull the weeds up, where you have to continue to cultivate the soil, you have to water the plant, you have to shoo away the squirrels and the rabbits and the animals and the birds trying to eat the seeds and eat the plants. You have to put fertilizer down and pesticides to get the bugs off and all of that kind of stuff. People start quitting. So now you had all of these people on the front end sow all of these seeds. When it was time to do the work, 75% of those people quit. So now when you get to the harvest, there's only 25% of the people left to harvest what 100% of the people sowed. That's why the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. So guess what? If you just hang in there, you're going to reap a harvest. Just by hanging in there, you're going to reap a harvest. Because some of those people who sown seeds early on have already quit, moved on, gave up. Just by hanging in there, you reap a harvest by default, because the harvest is too plentiful and there's only a handful of laborers. So you be one of those handfuls and you're going to reap the harvest. So guys, that's my time. I know we started this thing out as a 30-minute show and I'm getting closer and closer to an hour every day. But I appreciate all of the comments. I see you guys with your likes and all of the hearts and stuff floating across the screen. I appreciate that. That lets me know that you're listening, and that I think it lets me know that you like what I'm saying. But that is, you know, that's what this thing is all about. Your words or your seeds. They could be positive or negative, but just know if you sow positive seeds and enough time goes by, you're going to reap a high harvest of positivity. If you sow negative seeds and enough time goes by, you're going to reap a negative harvest. And if you've already sown negative seeds, but you're making a turnaround in your life, just understand it's nothing that you're doing right now that's causing this negativity to come up on you. It's that which you've done in your past, and you're going to have to sit tight and allow that storm to blow over, and you just got to sit there and weather that storm. And then you continue the process of continuing to sow positivity, and then eventually going forward, every storm that rolls into your life will be a storm of positivity. Now, understand that there's annuals and there's perennials. So some of the storms that you're dealing with are annual storms. These are storms because you planted annual things and they just come back. Some of the storms that you have to weather are going to be storms from perennials, from trees that you planted 10, 15, 20 years ago that finally reap a harvest, that finally produce fruit, and they're going to create a storm in your life, right? And you just have to deal with those things. Don't run from the storm, weather them, use that experience to continue to cultivate your soil. Because my experience is I've taken every one of them now and I turn them into fertilizer as I turn my soil over, and I keep sowing seeds of positivity. Now I'm on the track, and now every time I turn around, I'm in a storm. But guess what? That storm is a positive storm. Every time I turn around, I'm in the middle of a storm, but that storm is a positive storm because of the positive seeds that I've been sowing. So I want you to get out of the habit of being a pessimist, turn yourself into an optimist, and you do that long enough, over time, you will have a continuous succession of positive storms. Now, am I, do I escape the negative storms? No, because again, I planted some trees of negativity in my past life, and some of them are just now getting to the place where they're bearing fruit. So I do have some negative storms, but guess what? The overwhelming majority of the storms in my life now are positive. So every now and then I can deal with a negative storm, and I know that this too will pass. And I just batten down the hatches and I weather that storm. I take the experiences brought with that storm and I use that as fertilizer to cultivate my seed. So now when new seeds come in, those things germinate even faster because now the soil is fertilized with the experiences of life. Hope you guys get that. Again, today's episode is brought to you by Income Shifters Network. I'm partnering with them tonight, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Go to my fan page, Financial Health Mentor. Click on that event and say you're going. Show up at 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm going to give you a wealth building game plan that will knock your socks off. If you're really trying to build wealth and grow your finances from where they are to put yourself in a place where your money is making money for you, you want to be on this webinar. So thanks to my man, Brian Cohen, for bringing me in. I'm going to do my best to make this stuff as plain as possible so that you can see that you can build wealth from where you are. You don't have to have a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't have to have an inheritance. You don't have to hit the lottery. You don't have to go into some supermarket and slip and break a hip and try to get a settlement or something. You can take the money that you have right now and start building wealth one day at a time, man. 80% of millionaires in today's economy are first-generation millionaires. These are not people who were given something. These are not people who are lottery winners. These are people who put their pedal to the metal, worked hard, understood some principles that all wealthy people have in their life: multiple streams of income, passive income, residual income, and business systems. And they put that stuff to work in their lives. And now they're seven-figure households in a single generation. Now they're able to pass that on to their children, and their children can build up on that empire. So Income Shifters Network, appreciate you guys having me tonight. So go to my fan page, Financial Health Mentor, get yourself signed up for that event so that you will get the notification and the reminder at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to be live. So with that, guys, start using your words and make them positive, because the words that come out of your mouth, you're the first to hear. Right? So speak positive words so that you're constantly sowing positive seeds in your brain as you continue to cultivate your brain with life's experience and the information that you're allowing to come into your brain. And those seeds will fall on good ground. And when the seeds fall on good ground, they bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold. I'm your main man, H. Cortez, Financial Health Mentor to the working class. Until I talk to you in tomorrow's show, I want you to get your money up, because you absolutely can do it. Peace out. Fan pages, do a search for Financial Health Mentor on Facebook. So do a search within Facebook, Financial Health Mentor, or if you go to facebook.com/Financial Health Mentor, it should bring up my fan page. Cool. And I will grab the event and throw it in the message as soon as I get done here. So guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, man. I want you guys to have a blessed day and keep it positive, courtesy of my man, Terrence T. Hill, man, the most positive man on the planet. Talk to you guys later. Peace.